Welcome to Raving Ryan. I'm your host, Ryan Anastasio. Today I have a very special guest. He's exploring a run for governor of Connecticut, Jonathan Harris. Mr. Harris, how are you?
I'm great, Ryan. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here when I explore this run for statewide office, the potential candidacy for governor. It's a great show to be on.
Yeah, you have a lot of experience in politics. You've served as the mayor of West Hartford, state senator from West Hartford, deputy state treasurer, and as well as the commissioner of the Department of Consumer Protection. And now you're exploring a run for statewide office, possibly governor. I understand you also worked for an attorney. You worked as an attorney for many years and currently work as an attorney. Can you tell me a little about your life and some of the challenges you faced on your career in politics?
Yeah, I mean, same thing as anyone, just making sure that you show up, you do your work hard, and you open yourself up to different people and ideas. I will tell you, you never know if you follow that pathway where you end up. The first time I ran for something was in 2000. I faced a 20-year incumbent, so a gentleman, Bob Farr, that had been in office as a state representative since I was in high school running for senior class vice president. And I worked really, really hard, knocked on over 5,000 doors, raised what seemed to be a huge amount of money, about $40,000, had a lot of volunteers, students in college and high school, people helping me. I beat Bob Farr by 43 votes on election day, but we were within 0.5%. And so there was a recount the next Monday, and I lost by 9 votes out of 12,000 votes cast. And it was pretty devastating. I had also been serving and continued to serve as counsel to the Speaker of the House. So I've actually served in that capacity in the House of Representatives. So I all of a sudden the rug got pulled out from underneath me, but I didn't complain. I figured, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. I hugged Mr. Farr, went on my way, and I got appointed, I think because, especially in contrast to what was happening with President Bush and Vice President Gore in Florida with the recount and all the fighting, I got appointed to fill a spot on the West Hartford Town Council the next February of 2001, ran the next year as mayor, and won by 36 votes. So that loss was devastating, but it ended up changing where I was and enabled me to be here today.
Yeah, in 2014, you were appointed as the commissioner of the Department of Consumer Protection by Governor Daniel Malloy, and you stepped down earlier this year to explore a run for statewide office. I understand you did the whole range of things there, such as giving out permits to businesses, regulating businesses, and protecting citizens from unsafe products. Can you tell us more about the job and what you did there at the agency?
Yeah, interestingly enough, not only have I been a lawyer representing businesses and families for over 20 years, I also had an economic development and real estate business. I was regulated by Consumer Protection. So I've seen government not only from every angle, but I've literally been on both sides of the desk. Consumer Protection, besides the main licensing agency, including real estate, we're all liquor control, liquor permits, all drug control. We did a lot of things trying to combat the opioid crisis. We developed and expanded the cutting-edge medical cannabis program in the state, providing another good healthcare choice to people suffering from some really, really serious diseases. So gaming, the casinos, lottery, off-track betting, all product safety, all food safety, weights and measures, the scale, whether it's in the front of the store or in a jewelry store, or the big scales, the weight scales for trucks or for grain. We calibrated all those, and it was really cool because I actually went out on the road and got to experience all this so that I could learn. I learned by doing, so that when people gave me a decision or I was reading something in a document, I had firsthand experience and understanding of how the frontline workers actually got the job done, the people like really doing the hard work. We also are the main market balancer. The Connecticut Unfair Trade Practices Act, we make sure that companies are competing and that there's a level playing field, that no one is being fraudulent or deceptive in the way they deal with another business or trying to scam consumers, identity theft, other things.
Yeah, I understand you were involved in the medical marijuana process there. Can you tell us what you did with that?
Oh man, that's one of the, I guess I said, the cutting edge program. When I started and the medicine had just gone online, there were about 1,400 patients, about 80 physicians certifying. When I left, there were over 17,000, about 700 physicians. It's now well over 20,000 people that are patients taking advantage of this with their healthcare providers. Another good choice. Not only did the program expand and the number of debilitating diseases expand, so there was more access for things like cancer, AIDS, PTSD, Lou Gehrig's disease. We were able to add, with a very restrictive way, minors, so that kids suffering from severe epilepsy, sometimes having many seizures a day, went down to only a handful a week. It really was providing more and more health care. We also started, as of October 1st of 2016, the first in the nation state-based research program to be able to provide not just the anecdotal evidence that we saw about how well it was doing, say, treating the pain of a cancer patient, or helping them with nausea and the effects of chemo, but also getting real scientific information on what parts of the medicine work and what don't work as well. And not only is it a good healthcare program, but it created over 200 jobs. That doesn't even include the labs doing the testing or the supply chains into the dispensaries and the producers of the medicine.
Yeah, and some critics of medical marijuana have said that it's too easy to get medical marijuana, and it's too many people have it, and they're just getting it to have marijuana to use it for recreational use. Would you agree that that the system does need to be fixed?
No, I mean, the system is very tight. If anything, the system needs to allow access to more people that have sicknesses, diseases. I mean, you have to be diagnosed by a physician, or now an APRN, and it has to be an actual physician-patient relationship. They have to show that there's a need, that you're diagnosed with a specific condition, and that the benefits of the medicine outweigh the detriments, the downsides of the medicine. It is a very closed place. You cannot get into a dispensary unless you show a card. You cannot get into the part where the medicine is dispensed without showing your card again. There's a lot of security on this. There's diversion even in pharmacies of pharmaceuticals, way more than we've had in the medical marijuana program. So it is a very secure program.
Yeah, and it's been one of the biggest issues is recreational marijuana. You've talked about the possibility of making it legally, but critics would say that it's not sure. Is it a gateway drug? Could it lead to mental health problems? Do you think it's a good idea to have recreational marijuana?
I think it is everywhere now. It's in Massachusetts to our north. It's coming to Rhode Island. It will be in New York. It will be all around us, so that we have to take it seriously, and you can't stick your head in the sand. But we have to be smart about it. We have to regulate it in a secure way that's deliberate and thoughtful, the way that we've been regulating the medical marijuana program. And we have to take a look at the experience of the states around us and other states and see what the best model of regulation is. We have to do it because it's not going to go away. It's going to be here. So it's really the responsible thing is to actually regulate it. Some people, some of my opponents talk about all the revenue from it. We should do it because it's good public policy. The revenue might be a side benefit, but you need to take into account the costs of that thoughtful and secure regulation and some of the social costs that will incur, which there will be some. So we have to be direct and honest about it, but it is not going away, so we need to be responsible and do it the right way.
So if you were to be governor, would you go forward with the plan to make marijuana illegal?
If the plan was a thoughtful, deliberate, and secure regulation, and that would also have the side benefit of throwing off some revenue that we could use to fund our schools and provide additional health care, I think it would be good. I would not let it just loose, say it's legal one day. It has to be a highly regulated, secure program.
Yeah, I want to move into more about your candidacy for statewide office and possibly governor. There's a lot of candidates out there right now, and what do you think differentiates you from the other candidates? Why would somebody vote for Jonathan Harris?
I have the experience from every single level of government, from the public sector and private sector. As I said, I was regulated by Consumer Protection, and then I became the regulator. And the other thing that I've been able to do throughout my career, both public sector and private sector, is to be able to bring people together and kind of listen to one another, and create practical solutions to problems. I did it in West Hartford when we had a severe budget crisis in the wake of 9/11 and a recession. We were able to reinvent our government with our workers, resolve disputes like a fire contract we didn't have for 4 years that not only was fair to the people protecting us, it also saved taxpayers a lot of money and was forward-thinking, bringing our fire service into the 21st century from a 1950s model. We were able to preserve the quality of our schools, keep our bond rating, build up our fund balance because we worked together. Town, board, management, labor, business groups, civic groups, we need that type of cooperation now. I've done it in the past. I did it in the Senate. I did it by bringing our workers together at Consumer Protection. We were down 50 people and given more to do. You just named medical marijuana, but more activities on the opioid crisis. Additional areas that needed to be protected, like cottage foods, where people are making foods for sale in their kitchens. We had to do more, and we had to do it with less. 25% cut in our agency. And we were able to do that because we brought people together, because we used process improvement, because we used technology, and it was a team effort. That's what I can offer. And I'll tell you, we are in a really challenging situation. We're in a rut, but there are pathways out of it. And I think I have the experience, government, private sector, and being able to bring people together that can make the difference.
Yeah, and you just talked about the opioid crisis. Last month, President Trump called it a national health emergency. It's a big problem in Connecticut. We see thousands of people killed just in Connecticut each year by the opioid crisis. What are you going to do to combat this crisis if elected as governor?
Well, it's got to be a holistic solution like it is now. Everyone's working hard at it. Consumer protection, we were able to use the prescription drug monitoring program, make it stricter and stepped it up so that we could see what was being prescribed, painkillers, opioids, because they're often the source of the beginning of addiction. People then go to heroin because it's cheaper when they can't get those other drugs. So we tried to be strict at avoiding diversion to people that didn't have the prescription. Doctor shopping, so you'd go to different doctors. The PMP helped that. We were on the cutting edge with drug disposal, teaching people how to do it in their homes so they didn't have old prescriptions in their medicine cabinets. We were able to have drop boxes. We were in charge of the program to help people, pharmacists, prescribe naloxone, also known as Narcan, which is the life-saving drug. But we didn't just train them to get that drug, the Narcan, out to people suffering. We actually trained them how to connect people with prevention and recovery resources in the area. Because we wanted to make sure that people didn't have to use the naloxone. But there's a lot more that has to be done. We need more treatment beds so that when someone, say, is revived with Narcan, there's a place they can go. Too much of our treatment is limited to 30 days. We need to expand that. It could take 60, 90 days or more for somebody that's addicted to fully recover. We have to keep on realizing that addiction problems are not criminal problems. We don't want to throw people in jail for health issues. We want to treat the underlying mental health issues and treat it as the healthcare crisis that it is.
Yeah, but you're talking about regularly about how the opioids are addictive, and I want to go back to the marijuana issue. It has been said that marijuana is addictive and it could lead to drugs such as heroin. How would making a marijuana legal, do you think that would make the opioid crisis even worse?
Well, first of all, it's here. So it's not like you're going to snap your fingers and say, get away, especially when it's in the states all around us. I don't accept the fact that it's a gateway drug. But beyond that, we don't even have to get into that piece. It is here, okay? And the other thing is, when it comes to the opioid epidemic, the states that have medical marijuana programs have showed a decline in the prescribing of opioids and of other dangerous painkillers there's a direct connection to the use of those drugs and the use of heroin, fentanyl, and some of the killers. It is much less addictive than any opioid around. You do not overdose on it. So when figuring out the balance, I think overall an effectively regulated system is better than sticking our heads in the sand.
Yeah, and currently the state of Connecticut, many businesses are leaving. General Electric left, Alexion's now leaving, Aetna's possibly leaving. So it's a big issue, and a lot of businesses are leaving. There are few coming in. But what are you going to do to try to keep businesses in the state and to get more to come in if you're a governor?
Well, at the end of the day, it's all about education and jobs, and that's really important. I have 3 pathways. One is too detailed and dry, but focusing government, like we did in West Hartford, like I did in consumer protection, to actually lower costs and, more importantly, become more effective in the service delivery, public health and safety, things that are really needed, education. So that's a piece of it. The second pathway is economic development. We have to create much more growth in the state. And I've had experience with this too. For too long we've used and over-relied on the top-down method. You know, Governor Rowland, 6 pillars in Hartford, the convention center, $1 billion, build it, they will come. Well, it didn't really work that way, picking winners and losers in companies. My experience, both from the private sector as a real estate person and as a real estate attorney, and as mayor of West Hartford, was organic, bottom-up development, getting rid of barriers, making it attractive for private investment.
Yeah, and the state currently has an enormous deficit, and it's continuing to growing. A lot of people say the state has a spending problem. What are you going to do to try to get this deficit down if elected as governor?
Well, first of all, growth. I mean, growth is the big way. You create more jobs, you expand grand lists in towns, you expand economic opportunity. That's the first place you start.
Yeah, and Governor Malloy had 2 huge tax increases, and as taxes have been increased, the revenue has been going down. If elected, will you raise taxes?
Well, you're going to have to take a look at revenue, of course, because it is a growth issue, it's a spending issue, and it is a revenue issue. But we're always asked, will you raise this tax or cut this one, do that, raise? You got to take a holistic approach to it. In order to do this right, and all of these things I'm telling you about are probably going to take 10 years to plan and implement, with some successes along the way, of course. But you need to deconstruct and reconstruct the revenue base and say, if you were going to have a system of taxation that attracted people and businesses here and kept people and businesses here, what would it look like? How can you build in more fairness so people pay their fair share, progressivity into the system? How can you lessen regressivity so that people are paying more than their fair share? How can you limit that? And what are the taxes that are incentives, again, for people, businesses to come and stay here? And it's going to be a mix, probably of decreases of taxes, of rejiggering certain things, of readjusting it to the modern economy, and there will be some things that might be increased too in that mix to throw off that lesser amount of money that you'll need and also be able to rely on a stronger revenue, a larger revenue base.
And would you increase taxes on the rich? Because some people, it has been argued that when you tax the rich, they leave and our revenue goes down.
I think everyone should pay their fair share. I voted for progressive taxation, an increase in the income tax back many years ago. But the last 2 times it didn't work. You got to also take a look at the income tax and see how people are making their money now. It's not working at this point by just adding points on, because we are relying on about 1% of the population to pay 30% of the benefit. And a lot of that is the finance industry. So, Wall Street gets a cold, Connecticut gets a revenue fever because of that. So we have to be smart. We can't just look at quantity and numbers and percentages. We have to look at the underlying revenue base, grow it, and tax on it in a fair way so that everyone pays their fair share.
Yeah, and some candidates on the Republican side have suggested eliminating the state income tax either right now or over time. Do you think that's a possibility?
I don't think that's really possible. It's too big a piece of our revenue, but we need to take a look at the income tax.
It did work though, and we used to not have an income tax, so you don't think it's possible?
It's really hard to unwind that. But what I'll say is, again, take a look at every single way that we raise money, our taxes, our fee structure, what works, what doesn't work. I mean, I eliminated certain licensing when I was at Consumer Protection. Sure, we were getting some revenue from it, but it wasn't providing any protection. It was just setting up barriers that were hurting people from getting their credential as a plumber to get to work, or it was hurting our ability to get people what they needed to either start a job, to start a business, to work. So you got to look at all of these things holistically. We are not at the point now where we can just say, okay, we're going to raise the income tax or we're going to lower the income tax. That's not going to work unless you look at the big picture.
Yeah, and in this past legislative session, the issue of tolls on highways came up, and there was support from it on both sides of the aisle, and not support from it from both sides of the aisle. Would you consider adding tolls to the highways of Connecticut?
Without a doubt I would. I think it has to be a discussion. With modern technology, you can make it fair so people pay their fair share, so people around the borders either get quantity discounts or over a certain amount don't pay, so that it's fair based upon what they do. We want to capture revenue from people that are now driving through the state. We should also, though, again, holistic model, take a look at our gas tax. maybe we can get enough revenue off of tolls to be able to actually lower our gas tax, a regressive tax, and cut a tax. Perhaps if you cut a tax enough, like the gas tax, some of those people that are now zipping through on 95, say, from Greenwich to Stonington, might stop and buy some gas. More people, even at a lower tax rate that are purchasing, might raise more revenue. So we got to put all the pieces of the puzzle together. It's not a question of one or the other.
And would you use it to help with the deficit, or would you consider putting in a lockbox for transportation?
I think we have to go back to more use of funds in kind of a closed environment so that there's accountability on the spending. And I would put the transportation funds to transportation, because the other piece that we have to improve on, and this gets into the economic development, is our infrastructure. Rail connections into Boston and New York. We have to leverage the asset of being in between those two major metropolises. For too long, we've tried to be like them as opposed to connecting better into them with rail, with fiber optics to move people, freight, and ideas back and forth. Someone can afford a property, say, up in the northeast corner, but be able to have their big piece of property affordable, but be able to not only telecommute because of the fiber optics, but to get to Boston in a reasonable period of time through the rail lines. I was against the busway in Hartford because I thought that for much less money, it was like 600 or 700 million, for about a quarter of that, not a quarter, 250 million, we actually could have done a commuter rail between Hartford and Waterbury, connecting New Britain, Bristol, and all those places down to Waterbury, and then ultimately to New York through Metro North. That was a much better use. Plus, rail is an incentive for economic development. So those are good uses of debt, of capital, real solid infrastructure. It creates jobs in the short run to build it, and then there's a multiplier. It keeps on creating value and wealth and attracts businesses and people.
Yeah, and Governor Malloy there's a lot of critics. He has a very low approval rating, and he's had too large in tax increases. A lot of businesses have left the state while he has been governor. What do you think the Malloy legacy will be?
The Malloy legacy, you'll see over time, I think history will be kinder to him on things, because a lot of the stuff that he's done will be paying off dividends later. But just think of a couple things that he did well. And I'm not Governor Malloy, but when I look at it, pre-K education, some of the other pieces that he did to improve our education system. Second Chance Society, which has closed, 7 prisons, has lowered recidivism, and has helped people, again, treating criminal issues and violent criminals and those that are really harmful, have the prison space for them, but getting those that have health care issues like addiction, mental health issues, out of prison. It saved, I think, almost $80 million a year, but beyond that, it's a much better way to do things. Effectively ending homelessness amongst veterans, that was also Governor Malloy. So he did some good things, but I'm not Governor Malloy. I want people to look at what I did in West Hartford, what I did as a state senator to bring people together to solve problems, what I did at Consumer Protection, what I did in the private sector. And I'm someone that can actually bring people together to get some of these things done.
And you have a pretty strong connection to Governor Malloy. He nominated you at the Consumer Protection Agency. Do you think that's going to hurt you in your candidacy?
Governor Malloy gave me the opportunity to have one of the best jobs I've ever had, and I was able to do some really effective things as a team, not me. It was a we, to be able to have do more with less. A quarter of the agency, about 50 people over time, we were down. More to do. We did it better. We did it more effectively. We saved the taxpayers millions of dollars. That's what I did there. So he gave me the opportunity, sure, but I was the one with my deputy commissioner and the staff that was able to get that done.
Yeah, I want to finish up with some personal questions. Do you have any hobbies?
Yeah, although I had a little hard time doing it recently, I like to work out. I walk. I will run, mostly in the summer. I swim. I like to read, spend time with my wife Lucy, our son Spencer. So yeah, I do. I don't have as much time to do some of that stuff, but I do like it. By the way, I just want to say that I'm doing this not just because of my career. My parents, when I was a little kid, starting at age 4, were involved in electoral politics in the North End of Hartford. They started a civic organization, Blue Hill Civic Association, community activism, helping give people, giving back, is something that I was taught early on. So wherever I was, I stepped up. I volunteered for things. I helped raise money for things. I've been on boards of nonprofits. I've tried to figure out ways that I can help my neighbors, people all throughout my community, throughout the state and beyond. So that's kind of a hobby of mine too, just kind of giving back.
Yeah, Connecticut's really well known for its pizza restaurants. Do you have one in the state?
I like some of the local pizzas. There are a lot of good ones, but Harry's and Luna Pizza in West Hartford, I'll go for those.
What about New Haven? Do you like Sally's or Pepe's or Modern better?
We get more Pepe's up north, and I used to go to Sally's. A friend of mine really turned me on to Modern, so there was a little streak there that when I came to New Haven. But I'll tell you, I just brought my son here last week. I like Louis' Lunch. I like, especially I will claim, like they claim, that it is the first hamburger on a bun in the history of the world, and they're great still.
All right, Mr. Harris, thanks for coming on. Thank you for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can go to ravingryan.com. Follow me on Facebook at ravingryan and on Twitter at ravingryan1, and go to your campaign website.
We'll put it on there too. That's Harris4CT, HARRISFORCT.com.
Thanks for watching. Reporting for Raving Ryan, I'm Ryan Anastasio.